The rhythmic tapping of keys was the heartbeat of room 402. It was a dry, plastic sound, clack, 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 tap, that usually started around midnight and carried through until the blue light of dawn filtered through the heavy dorm curtains. I'd grown to rely on it. For a freshman struggling with the isolation of a new city, that sound was a reminder that I wasn't alone. Leo was the perfect roommate for a guy like me. He was quiet, a night owl, and possessed a predictable, grounding presence. Even with my eyes closed, I knew exactly where he was. I could smell the faint, sharp scent of his sandalwood cologne drifting from the top bunk. I could hear the rustle of his duvet when he shifted his weight. Sometimes the soft glow of his laptop screen would cast a long rectangular shadow against my wall, a silhouette of a person working toward a future, just like I was. "Still at it, man?" I'd mumble into my pillow, my voice thick with sleep. He wouldn't answer verbally. Leo was never much for small talk, but the typing would pause for a second, a silent acknowledgement, before resuming its steady pace. It was a comfort. It was home. The subtle shift. It started with the cold. Tangier's nights can get chilly, but the dorm room began to feel like a cellar. I assumed the old radiator was acting up again, a common complaint in the halls of Oakhaven. I'd pull my blanket tighter, listening to the familiar sounds. The typing was faster that night, more frantic. It didn't sound like an essay anymore. It sounded like someone trying to outrun a timer. I looked up at the underside of the top bunk. The wooden slats were old, and I noticed a dark stain beginning to bloom near the corner, right above where Leo's head would be. It looked like water damage, a deep, reddish-brown circle.
I made a mental note to tell him about it in the morning, but morning never seemed to bring Leo. By the time I woke up from my 9 a.m. economics lecture, the top bunk was always neatly made and the room was empty. I figured our schedules were just perfectly inverted. He was a ghost in the daylight, a shadow in the dark. The realization. The third week of the semester brought the first heavy rain. I was sitting at my desk, trying to focus on a textbook, when the smell hit me. It wasn't sandalwood anymore. It was something sweet and cloying, like rotting peaches left in a locker. I glanced at Leo's bunk. The shadow was there, draped over the side, but it looked limp. "Leo, you okay?" No response, just the sudden, sharp clack of a single key being pressed. The next afternoon, I ran into our resident assistant, Marcus, in the hallway. He was carrying a clipboard and looking stressed. "Hey, Hamza," Marcus said, stopping me. "I've been meaning to ask, have you heard anything from Leo's family, or seen him at all?" I laughed, though it felt hollow. "Seen him? He's in the room every night, Marcus. He's a machine. Doesn't stop typing until 4 a.m. Marcus stopped walking. His face went pale, the kind of gray you only see in hospital waiting rooms. He pulled me into the stairwell, away from the other students. "Hamza, what are you talking about? Leo's parents reporting him missing 3 weeks ago. He never checked into his classes after the first day. The police searched the room while you were at the gym 2 weeks ago. They said his bed was stripped and his computer was gone." The truth in the dark. My heart didn't race. It slowed down until it felt like a heavy stone in my chest. I told Marcus he was wrong. I told him I'd heard the typing last night. I told him I'd smelled the sandalwood. "I'm coming with you," Marcus said, his voice trembling. We walked to room 402. My hand shook as I slipped the key into the lock. The door groaned open, revealing a room that looked exactly as it always did. Except it didn't. In the harsh afternoon light, I saw the truth. Leo's desk was empty. No laptop, no books, just a thick layer of dust. I looked at the top bunk. The mattress was bare. The blue striped cover I thought I'd seen was nowhere to be found. But the stain, the reddish-brown circle on the wood, was there.
It wasn't water damage. It was thick, dried, and smelled of that cloying, rotten sweetness. "There's nobody here, Hamza," Marcus whispered, backing toward the door. "You've been sleeping in an empty room." The final echo. I stayed at a friend's place that night, but the curiosity, or perhaps the lingering madness, drew me back the following evening. I needed to know. I sat in the hallway outside room 402, the lights of the corridor flickering. At exactly midnight, I heard it. Clack, 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 tap. The sound of the keyboard, but the desk was empty. I knew it was empty. I leaned my ear against the wood of the door. From inside the room, I heard a rhythmic rustle, like a heavy duvet being shifted. Then the smell wafted through the door gap, not sandalwood, but the scent of a damp earth and something long dead. Then, a voice. It wasn't Leo's. It was a wet clicking sound that mimicked the cadence of my own voice from nights before. "Still at it, man?" the thing inside the room whispered to the empty air. The typing stopped. A heavy thud hit the floor, like something large and soft dropping from the top bunk. Footsteps approached the door, slow, uneven, dragging. I didn't wait to see what opened it. I ran, and I never looked back. But sometimes, when I'm in a quiet room at 2 a.m., I hear that single sharp clack of a key, and I know that wherever room 402 is, something is still keeping the routine.
The Al-Qarawiyyin archive sat at the lowest point of the university, 3 levels beneath the street noise of Tangier. During finals week, the upper floors of the library were a chaotic hive of stressed students and spilled coffee. But down here, in the restricted stacks of level B3, the air was different. It was heavy, pressurized, and smelled of decaying parchment and cold stone. I had found a nook hidden behind a row of oversized architectural folios. It was the perfect spot to disappear. I needed the silence to master the complex trade theories for my exams, a Sigma mindset of total isolation to get the job done while the rest of the world slept. At 11 p.m., the overhead announcement echoed through the vents, muffled and distorted like a voice underwater. The library was closing. I stayed still, my breath held, waiting for the security guard's flashlight to sweep past my aisle. When the heavy thud of the motorized vault door signaled the final lockdown, I was alone. Or so I thought. The liminal labyrinth. The silence of a library after hours isn't actually silent. It's a physical weight. The hum of the fluorescent lights above me was constant, a low-frequency buzz that felt like it was vibrating inside my skull. Every few minutes one would flicker, casting jerky, strobe-like shadows across the spines of the books. The hallways felt longer than they had an hour ago. The yellowed linoleum floors stretched into a darkness that the dim lights couldn't quite pierce. It was a classic liminal space, a place meant for transit and activity, now frozen and eerie in its emptiness. I shifted my weight, and my plastic chair let out a sharp, piercing creak. Shh! The sound was immediate. It came from the next aisle over. It was the classic sound of a librarian, sharp, authoritative, and wet. I froze. My heart hammered against my ribs.
I hadn't seen anyone else down here. "Hello?" I whispered. My voice felt small, swallowed by the rows of books. "Shh." It was closer this time. It lasted longer, trailing off into a sound that resembled air escaping a punctured lung. The shifting stacks. I decided to leave. The isolation that had felt like a strength 10 minutes ago now felt like a trap. I gathered my laptop and pens, trying to be as quiet as possible. But as I zipped my backpack, the sound of the zipper was like a chainsaw in the dead air. Thump, squelch, thump, Something was moving in the darkness beyond the glow of my desk lamp. It wasn't the rhythmic walk of a human. It was the sound of something heavy being dragged, punctuated by a wet, suction-like noise. I began to walk toward the elevator bank. As I moved, I noticed something impossible. The bookshelves were different. The aisles that should have been straight were now curving, tilting inward like the ribs of a giant beast. The titles on the spines were no longer in Arabic or English. They were symbols that seemed to squirm when I tried to focus on them. I tripped over a loose floor tile, my boots hitting the ground with a dull thud. Shh! The sound was right behind my ear. I felt a gust of freezing, foul-smelling air hit the back of my neck. It smelled like stagnant water and ancient, moldering cloth. I didn't look back. I sprinted toward the emergency stairwell, my footsteps echoing like drum beats. Thud, 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 thud. From every dark corner of the basement, the response came back in a chorus of overlapping whispers. Shh, shh, shh. The final silence. I reached the heavy steel door of the stairwell and yanked the handle. It was locked. Not just locked, it felt fused to the frame. I turned around, my back pressed against the cold metal. The flickering lights in the hallway began to pop, one by one, moving toward me. Darkness swallowed the library, inch by inch. In the final glow of the last working bulb, I saw it. It was tall, too tall for the ceiling, and its limbs were thin and pale, like bleached wood. It had no face, only a wide vertical slit where a mouth should be.
It didn't have feet. Its lower body ended in a mass of dark, sodden rags that left a trail of black moisture on the floor. It raised a long, spindly finger to the place where its nose should have been. I opened my mouth to scream, but my throat was dry, and only a small, pathetic whimper escaped. The creature leaned in, its shadow falling over me, blotting out the last of the light. Its mouth slit peeled open, revealing rows of needle-thin teeth, and it let out one final deafening sound that filled the room until it was the only thing I could hear. Shh! The light overhead shattered. The darkness was absolute, and in that basement, 3 levels below the world, the silence finally became permanent. I've always preferred the night. There's a clarity to the world when the noise of the masses fades away. As a student and a trader, I built my life around the lone wolf philosophy, discipline, isolation, and a total lack of fear. While the rest of the campus was at a house party or asleep, I was finishing a 6-hour biology lab, my mind already pivoting to the Asian market opening. I stepped out of the science building at 1:14 a.m. The air in Tangier was unusually thick, a heavy Atlantic fog rolling over the campus like a burial shroud. It was the kind of cold that bites through a jacket and settles in the marrow. My car was parked in Lot 7, nearly a kilometer away, across the sprawling open quad and past the old athletic fields. The silence was absolute. Usually, I found it empowering. Tonight, it felt predatory. The Sentinel in the Mist. The campus layout was a grid of concrete paths illuminated by tall, flickering lampposts. Each one created a small island of sickly yellow light in the sea of gray fog. I started walking, my boots clicking rhythmically on the pavement. I was focused, calculating my walk time and my next trade entry. Then I saw him. 3 lampposts ahead, a figure stood perfectly still. He was tall, wearing a long, dark coat that seemed to absorb the light around it. He wasn't looking at a phone or waiting for a friend. He was just facing me. Probably just another late-night grinder, I told myself. Logic was my armor. I didn't slow down. I maintained my pace, my eyes fixed forward. But when I passed the spot where the man had been, he was gone. There was nowhere he could have run. The quad was an open field for 50 yards in every direction. I stopped and scanned the fog. Nothing. I started walking again. 10 seconds later, I stopped abruptly to adjust my bag. Tap, tap. 2 distinct footfalls echoed behind me, stopping exactly 2 seconds after I did. It was as if the sound of my own walking had a shadow that couldn't quite keep up. The impossible geometry. I reached the engineering block. The massive glass buildings were dark, reflecting the fog like black mirrors. I looked ahead. Under the next lamppost, the figure was back. Same coat, same height, same motionless posture. My pulse quickened, but I refused to give in to the beta instinct of panic. I gripped the strap of my bag, my knuckles white. I was a runner. I was a fighter. I was disciplined. I kept moving, eyes locked on the figure. As I drew closer, the fog swirled around him, but his features remained a blurred, shifting void. I passed him again. The smell hit me this time, a metallic ozone scent, like a storm that never broke. I didn't look back. I increased my stride. My breathing was steady, controlled. I turned the corner toward the athletic fields, the final stretch before the parking lot. And there he was, under the very next light. Logic began to fail. It was physically impossible for a human to have circled around the buildings and positioned themselves ahead of me without me seeing or hearing them. The lone wolf in me realized I wasn't the predator tonight. I was the prey being herded. The echo of the hunt. I broke into a jog. I've run marathons in the rain. I knew how to manage my breath, but as my pace increased, the phantom footsteps behind me did the same. Clack, 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 clack. I stopped dead. I turned around, my heart hammering against my ribs. The path behind me was empty, the fog glowing yellow under the lights. But 2 seconds after I stopped, the sound of running footsteps continued for 3 more paces before falling silent. "Who's there?" I shouted. My voice sounded thin, stripped of its usual confidence. No answer. Only the hum of the electricity in the poles. I looked back toward my car. The figure was standing under the final lamppost before the parking lot. But he wasn't standing anymore. He was crouched, his hands touching the pavement, his body coiled like a sprinter at the starting block. I didn't think. I didn't analyze the trade risk. I sprinted. I flew past the final light, my eyes fixed on my car's silver frame in the distance. As I passed the figure, I saw it clearly for a split second. It wasn't wearing a coat. Its skin was the color of wet asphalt, and its limbs were far too long, jointed in ways a human body shouldn't be. I reached my car, fumbling with the keys, my hands shaking for the first time in years. I dived inside, slammed the lock, and cranked the engine. The headlights cut through the fog, illuminating the empty road ahead. I looked in the rearview mirror. The figure wasn't behind the car. It was standing directly under the lamppost I had just passed. It raised a long, spindly arm and pointed, not at me, but at the passenger seat beside me. I looked over. The seat was empty, but the leather was slowly depressing, as if a heavy weight was settling into it. And then the faint, metallic smell of ozone filled the cabin. I put the car in gear and floored it, but as I drove away, I heard it. A soft, rhythmic tapping on the inside of the windshield. Tap, 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 tap. The same rhythm as my own heartbeat.